So, dear colleagues, happy to see all of you here today for our first meeting after the summer break. I sincerely hope you did have time to recover a bit, recharge your batteries, spend the time with those you don't have normally time to be with. And as we are having really extremely important and lovely guest here this morning, and we would like to give her, Roxana, welcome very much here at our midst, as much time as possible. So let's try to start without any further delays. Let me start with the language regime. We've got active, so you can speak and listen to French, German, English, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Greek, Swedish, Czech, Hungarian, Polish, Bulgarian and Romanian, and you can speak but not listen to Dutch, Danish, Finnish, Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian, Maltese, Slovak, Slovene and Croatian. You all have received the draft program of today's morning session. So you know that we are starting with Commissioner MîNZATU, and we are really extremely grateful that, Roxana, you find in your agenda time for talk to us on this important issue. Then we go through the presentation of the study on the European Pillar of Social Rights, State of Play in 2024. And then we've got a panel on the new action plan on the implementation of the European Pillar of Social Rights, about initiatives, which is actually all in all just part of our initiative to be on time to deliver ideas, evaluations, proposals for the new action plan that is under preparation, and we just want to contribute to that from our point of view. So, dear Commissioner, Executive Vice President, dear Roxana MîNZATU, distinguished participants, dear colleagues, as I said, I hope you did have some summer break to enjoy, although there were many incidents that kept us glued to the news. In any case, on behalf of the Workers Group, we thank you for all joining us today for this important debate on the new action plan implementing the European Pillar of Social Rights. The European Pillar of Social Rights was preceded by several important events and developments, including the 2008 financial crisis and growing socio-economic disparities between and within the EU member states. That political and economic context in the EU led to the neglect of social rights, as the focus was placed on austerity and budget stabilization. So, the introduction of the pillar came from the recognition by the Juncker Commission that the European Union had lost its way regarding social progress. The importance of the pillar was then highlighted by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. At that time, social dimension was given some priority at the EU level, with the introduction of instruments such as SURE, but macroeconomic and competitiveness considerations were once again taking precedence over social objectives. Recent economic pressures from high inflation and the energy crisis, exacerbated by geopolitical conflicts and the ongoing climate crisis, have created a new urgency around social policy. And even if overall support for the social policy at the EU level remains strong, as reflected in the June Eurobarometer findings, it continues to be the reality that too many workers across Europe remain stuck in precarious, low-paid jobs, while social protection systems are stretched or underfunded. This is why we need to continue our efforts to implement the pillar and to address the social crisis and malaise that also fuels the rise of the far right. We should learn from the past. We cannot afford the risk of too little, too late on the social front, as this leads to potential economic, political backslash, as well as rising inequalities and the end of social peace. We as Workers Group believe that a Europe that does not deliver opportunities for all including quality jobs and strong social protections, is a Europe at risk, socially, economically, and politically. And therefore, welcome the fact that the Commission will publish a new action plan by the end of the year. And in anticipation, we have been the first to deliver a comprehensive package on what we would like to see in this new action plan. Dear Executive Vice President, you attended our EESC plenary session in June, on the day our committee adopted our own initiative opinion on the new action plan, drafted by our dear colleague Sophia Reisecker. Hey. This opinion was part of a package which included the opinion itself, done with fact-finding missions and a survey, and a study aiming to take stock of and evaluate certain European Pillar of Social Rights Directive. It also considers what improvements could be made to enhance implementation and enforcement, and identifies current legislative gaps in those areas and recommends further steps for the new action plan. We will have time to hear more on the study and on our opinion during this meeting. So, dear Commissioner, by this short introduction, the floor is yours, and I hope we are going to have really nice and fruitful exchange. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, dear Lucy. Thank you, dear President, and thank you to everybody for organizing this start of the autumn, of the season, of a new part of our common work here in Europe. And I think it is symbolic. You know, we were talking as we were entering the building, discussing the pillar with the workers group here in the committee. I think it should give us the energy, the direction, the inspiration for the work of this autumn, and I really thank you for that. With this, let me get into my address, and then, of course, I will welcome your questions and our exchange. Of course, I'm happy that we discussed today the action plan that we are preparing for the European Pillar of Social Rights, and I'm happy to discuss it with the European Economic and Social Committee, as you are one very important bridge between Europe's institutions and the people that we serve, bringing the voices of workers, of employers, and of civil society into the heart of our decisions. Nowhere is this more important than in the European Pillar of Social Rights. Your contributions, including the opinion that was adopted back in June and the study that you will present today, will really help shape our work. I want to thank everyone who has worked on this topic, who will work on this topic, and of course, again, to thank the rapporteur, Sophia Reisecker, for the opinion, and for you, and to you, to the workers group, for commissioning the study that will be presented today. Strong social rights are the backbone of our social market economy. They are Europe's promise to its people that we will protect fairness, dignity, and opportunity for all. They make our societies stronger and more democratic. These are the issues people care most about. Time and time again, the Eurobarometer surveys show that employment and social affairs remain at the very top of citizens' concerns across Europe. That is why the European Pillar of Social Rights is so very important. As I've mentioned it before, I call it our social compass. Sometimes I call it our social shield. These are buzzwords, I know, but I cannot state enough how important our work on the pillar is. This pillar gives us the direction, but we also need to have a clear destination, not just whereabouts. To quote Seneca, if one does not know to which port he is sailing, no wind can be favorable. So the action plan, the second action plan on the implementation of the pillar, is how we are going to chart the course. Of course, the Porto targets on jobs, on training, on poverty reductions are our harbors. They tell us where we want to go so that every effort, every policy brings us closer to that shore. It hasn't exactly been a smooth sailing since the targets and the first action plan were adopted in 2021. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine triggered an energy crisis and a double-digit inflation that hit people's jobs and purchasing power especially among the most vulnerable. At the same time, Europe has been slower to adopt new technologies and ways of work, making us less and less competitive. As a result, progress towards the 2030 targets has been uneven. We are close to achieving the employment target. It is 75.9% in 2024, with a target of 78%, as we know. But yes, we are still lagging behind on the training target, with a 39.5% in 2022, while the target for 2030 is 60%, quite far away. And on the poverty reduction target, with 1.6 million fewer people at risk of poverty or social exclusion, while the target is a reduction of 15 million in the number of people at risk of poverty or social exclusion. So with less than 5 years to go, the new action plan is our chance. I think it's our responsibility to really be able to steer firmly towards these targets. It is how we renew our commitment to these goals that we set, while adjusting our sails to close the gaps that remain. Of course, we need to face these new challenges, the new currents, and we need to really make the most of opportunities. But I really tackle this new action plan with the importance that it really has for the remaining time of action. Our new action plan will be framed around the same 3 chapters. It will reflect the relevance of equal opportunities and access to the labor market, the fair working conditions, and social protection and inclusion. And around these three chapters, we need to construct so as to reflect the key political priorities: competitiveness of our economy, the digital and green transition, democracy, and preparedness. But all of these have a very clear people dimension. Your opinion rightly indicates that competitiveness and social progress must go and do go hand in hand, and I could not agree more. Competitiveness and social progress reinforce each other. Strengthening our competitiveness and productivity is also about increasing employment, delivering on quality jobs, better skills, and of course, very important, social inclusion. The new action plan will build on what has already been achieved while adapting to new realities. It will ensure that social considerations remain at the very top of the European Union's agenda. But this is not a task of EU institutions alone. Making the pillar central to our policies is a shared responsibility of both national, regional, and local authorities, of social partners, and of civil society alike. And that is why we launched the public consultation a few weeks ago. It will still remain open for 10 more days, so I encourage everyone to take part and spread the word. The more voices we hear, the stronger the new action plan for the pillar will be. Ladies and gentlemen, in these challenging times that we live, the pillar is more than a compass, as I've mentioned in the beginning. It is our social shield, a shield that needs to of course, protect, but also to empower people. A shield that will need to ensure, to offer solidarity between generations, to take care of our workers today and of pensioners tomorrow. This is a shield that will need to protect quality jobs, to establish and protect quality jobs, and to put skills, innovation, and social protection on an equal footing with competitiveness, with innovation, with security, with preparedness. This is part of the vision for the new action plan. I am pleased to see how closely it aligns with yours, and I think that together we need to build it and make it a reality. I thank you again for the opportunity to exchange today. I am looking forward to your questions now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roxana. That was actually quite a clear statement. As I already mentioned, you can feel us backing you strongly in your efforts on this. Of course, linking the social welfare, the social aspects with competitiveness and stuff like that. We are a bit emotional and sensitive on this, but of course we are well aware that this needs to be a reality, especially in today's agenda and today's situation. But without any further delay, we are opening the floor for your questions, comments. I've got already Cinzia on my list, Rudy Delev, Maxi, Sophia, hands up, check. Florian. So I've got Cinzia, Rudy, Maxi, Sophia, Jack, Florian, Dumitru, Claude. Okay, so be so kind, stick to 2 minutes so that Commissioner has also a space for responding. So Cinzia, please go ahead.
Thanks a lot. I'm here. Thanks a lot, Ms. MîNZATU, to be here and be available to also a lively discussion. We talk a lot about competitiveness, and we put in contradiction competitiveness and social agenda and social progress, where they are put in one against the others, while, as you said, these are going together. I want to raise two worrying trends in the social agenda that I think we have to address in the new action plan. The first one is more and more the individualization of the employment relationship, which means undermining the role of collective agreements. It's not only about collective bargaining, but also the promotion of collective agreements as tools to grant equal treatment, equal working conditions, equal opportunities for all workers. We think that it is very important to implement the second part of the directive on minimum wage, on collective bargaining and collective agreements, because we are witnessing the decreasing of the coverage of collective agreements in several countries, and this is a worrying trend. The second point is the labor costs. We know that employers, because of competitiveness, because of the new context and so on, they ask to cut labor costs. Now, we see the tendency to shift the responsibility to workers about training, upskilling, reskilling, and also to shift to workers the responsibility of complementary health and pension schemes. This is a very worrying trend because we do not agree to dismantle the public pillar of health, pension systems and so on. We have different models in our countries of complementary schemes, but this cannot substitute the public pillar. And this is a very worrying trend. As you can imagine, this can bring to more inequalities because between those who can afford to cover complementary schemes and those who cannot. So this is something that we have to see in the context of demographic changes, in the context of the new welfare systems, how to sustain the sustainability of the welfare systems, but we are very worried about these trends. And I would like to have your views about this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Cinzia. Cinzia is the president of our SOC section, so a very important person here. I might remind you to use your languages, as we are having really rich interpretation regime. Let's try to use it. So, Rudy, you are the next one.
Ja, oké. Thank you. Ik zal het dus op algemene aanvraag in het Nederlands doen.
Well, as per your request, I'll do this in Dutch. In 2017, the social pillar, the pillar of social rights, was adopted, and we had some hearings in order to support it. I think it's very important if we think about the commissioner at the time. And they had to make alliances with governments that wanted to make progress in the area. And there's a second issue, and this is very much in line with what Cynthia just said about reforms and professional training. It's not a specific responsibility of the employer. It's really a responsibility, a social responsibility, and also responsibility on other sides. I think if we look at the just transition, and I would like to get the vision of the Commission on that area and the link that entails with other commissioners, for example, Commissioner Ribeira, looking at just transition, how that links in with competitiveness and the global approach and the actual implementation of the European Pillar of Social Rights, and linking that with just transition, working with governments, like-minded governments. And I would like to really get a little bit more of an insight as to the cooperation underway.
Thank you very much. Rude Maxe, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Commissioner, for the introduction and for presenting presenting your ideas on the action plan. I also want to thank you because I can imagine that at the moment it's not only an easy task to put social and employment rights first, as we have this big and strong narrative of competitiveness, which I think is really strong at the moment. And we see that there are some discussions and some people who try to point out that social and employment rights are actually contradicting competitiveness. And so I think it's really important that we join and that we form alliances in order to counter these kind of arguments. And I would like to ask you regarding social dialogue and also workers' participation, which is also, I mean, at least social dialogue, a part of the social pillar. At the moment, we're facing a lot of problems when it comes to workers' voice and workers' participation. Of course, we made a lot of progress when it comes to individual rights, which I think is also really important. But when it comes to collective rights and collective action, when it comes to workers' voice in companies and in plans, we actually face challenges. And these rights are undermined not only by European law, but also by European company law. And at the moment, there are discussions when it comes to the 28th regime, which is about to be proposed in the end of this year, in the beginning of next year. And we're really worried that there might be another option when it comes to circumventing workers' voice, workers' participation on company level. From our point of view, workers' participation on all levels is actually required to have a just transition, to actually deal with the challenges on company level. And we actually think we need to strengthen this part of workers' participation, of collective rights. Of course, we were really glad that we made some progress when it comes to the European Works Council directive, but we're convinced and we think that we need to put more effort into collective rights, strengthening collective rights on European level, and at the moment we kind of see the opposite, looking at, for example, the 28th regime, and maybe you can give us some insights on this discussion and in how far also collective rights, strengthening collective rights and workers' voice is also a part of maybe a social pillar action plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maxi. Sophia, please.
Thank you very much, Lucy, and thanks, Commissioner, for being here. I think we've already had the chance to discuss the opinion on the implementation of social rights, so I would not like to go into the details of the opinion again, but rather be a bit more honest in this room. It was impossible, of course, to address this in a plenary, but We already heard from other colleagues that the current political climate is quite a difficult one, and that we hear from employers and from other political forces that this is not the time to invest in social rights, that we cannot afford to invest in social rights right now because we need to focus on competitiveness, which means sometimes lowering wages and social security, that we need to invest in defense, and we simply cannot afford to look inwards and to protect people. So this would be pretty much my question, or one of my questions. What is your assessment of the situation, and well, what do you expect, how forward-looking we can be with a new action plan? Do you think that there is a chance that we actually can have some legally binding proposals within the action plan, as we had with the Pay Transparency Directive, etc.? Or will it be rather a coordination of the member states' policies and some recommendations? Because built on the experience, legal proposals are crucial to really make improvements. That's what we heard from all of our social partners and civil society organizations, that without legally binding instruments, there won't be any progress on the ground. And the second question I've got is, how are you linking the debate on the action plan with the multi-annual framework? I think we also need the governance and the funding for the Pillar of Social Rights, so the MFF will be crucial for the next few years, and I was wondering what kind of role the action plan is going to play there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Jack, please.
Good morning, Lucy and members. Good morning, Vice President. I want really to apologise to you and to everyone, because I just want to take a minute of your time to focus on the domestic situation in Ireland, where we have the unique situation, as you might be aware, where we don't have a right to collective bargaining, to participate in collective bargaining in Ireland. The employers have an absolute veto on denying workers that right. It's denied now to the great majority of workers in the private sector. Now, you might be a little surprised to hear this, I don't know, because you would be accustomed to a great deal of lip service on social dialogue from the authorities in Ireland, especially when they go to Europe. But it's actually a disguise, frankly. That's what it is. We in Ireland are very good at disguising our inadequacies, and we have, as you know, very impressive statistics, but they disguise a grimmer reality on economic equality, and that's evident on the exclusion of workers from the right to collective bargaining, which I think is enjoyed by virtually every other working population in Europe. And it's also evident on access to a public healthcare system. We have one, but it's grossly inadequate, and on housing. And all of these add up to the effective economic disenfranchisement of at least half the population. And I would ask you, Vice President, to be alert on this and to do what you can to persuade the authorities in Ireland to address the issue of the right to collective bargaining, which is enjoyed by most workers in Europe. I'm sorry, everybody, for just dwelling on that unique situation, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack. Very important. I've got Florian now on my list.
Thank you so much, dear Lucy. Well, I will speak in Romanian since I have this possibility and I'm following your recommendations, so please use your headphones. În primul rând, vă mulțumesc, doamna vicepreședinte.
First of all, thank you so much, Mrs. MîNZATU, for being here today, and I would like to congratulate you for your efforts, because I do know that currently it is not easy to defend social rights. It is far from easy to defend the well-being of our European citizens, because in this context we speak way too often about the war and things that we would not have brought into discussion so easily 10 or 15 years ago. I would also like to congratulate you for having defended the social aspects within the future MFF. We do have an envelope of 14% for our social rights. We can consider the possibility of increasing this envelope up to 20%. But nevertheless, I would like to send a message here, if I may. When it comes to trade unions, there are commonalities between their agenda and your agenda. So my personal plea to you is to work together even more in the future and to support each other when it comes to promoting our social rights. We should never leave anyone behind. Why am I saying this? Because currently I can see, and I know that you can see, that we have an economic model that leaves families behind, that leaves children behind. Children are growing up alone, and we are undermining the future of our young people. So we should work together even more and defend the future of the next generations. At the same time, I do warmly welcome the fact that you do give the necessary attention to the regions in Eastern Europe. There is a public consultation on the pact with the regions bordering our European countries, regions from Russia and Belarus and the Ukraine. This is very important because in the eastern part of Europe, and you know it, we are currently speaking about a real war and the significant impact of the propaganda from Russia on an effect on certain professional categories in our population. And the most disadvantaged persons are the most vulnerable persons when it comes to this war of information. I also welcome the fact that the President von der Leyen is in Romania, in Constanța, today to speak about the region of the Black Sea, and not only. But my question is, how do you see this concept of clean transition replacing the concept of a just transition? Because in the regulation suggested by the Commission, I saw that this concept of just transition is a bit marginalized. This concept was actually replaced by the concept of clean transition. But a clean transition does not necessarily mean a just transition. Could you explain what this is all about, please? And thank you for being here. I really warmly welcome all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dumitru Fornea, please.
Vă mulțumesc, doamna președinte.
Thank you. Welcome, Commissioner, here in our house. Many years ago, on the 1st of September 1939, Nazi Germany invaded Poland and thus initiated the Second World War, and the peace in Europe was undermined. Today, in Eastern Europe at least, we can see now, my colleague before me was quite diplomatic when it comes to the European pillar of social rights. But I repeat, what we now see in Eastern Europe is that we have a problem when it comes to social peace. And what do I mean? You know the situation in Romania very well. So, starting with the 1st of September, our new government in Romania has excluded from the system of public health more than 600,000 persons that were co-insured. The insurance system exists in many European states, in Germany, for example. So you can have a public health insurance and a private one. You can have an insurance if a person in your family works. This is no longer possible in Romania. We've also had many discussions and debates in Romania about the increase of the VAT, indexation of the pensions. We had an increase of the tax on property of more than 70%. We have a doubling of the prices when it comes to energy, a taxing of 10% of the pensions that exceed 600 euros, a quota of health insurance for pensions exceeding 800 euros. All this has an impact concretely on the reality of the European Pillar of Social Rights. So currently it is fundamental for the European Commission to intervene and to say something in order to balance the social relationship system in Romania. Not only, I listened to what my colleague from Ireland has said when it comes to collective bargaining. We have a similar situation in Romania and not a very balanced relationship between the social partners. As you know, the multinationals were supposed to pay a higher tax, but the government has given up this measure. Nevertheless, all the measures that I've mentioned before will be applied in the future. So the worker, the normal citizens, will have to pay for the results of the economic crisis and cover the excessive deficit in Romania. So it is fundamental that the European Commission communicate directly with the citizens in these states and that it send concrete messages on the promotion and defense of the principles in the European Pillar of Social Rights. Thank you, and hopefully in the future, just like my Romanian colleague Marin has mentioned before, we will be able to work on concrete aspects, concretely affecting the citizens, and not just theory and lip service. More than ever, we need a European Union, but this European Union should have a positive effect on the life quality and each and every citizen. And in the past 6 months, this was not the case for the Romanian citizens. They have felt abandoned by the European institutions, and Europe should become an integral part of the life of these citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Dumitru, and Claude.
Merci pour votre intervention. Je me souviens au moment.
Thank you very much. I remember at the time when the European of Social Rights was established with Juncker and Tyson's. Basically, the starting point was a flagrant imbalance between the social side and the economic side of things. And this is not a new imbalance. If I look at what Jacques Delors said, he also has launched criticism about the imbalance in these areas. I like your term of the shield. Why would we talk about a democratic shield? It's because there is a possible failure of our democracies because of the surge in populism and extreme right-wing parties. And they really tap into the feeling and a certain reality that a lot of people feel about not being heard in society. They've basically been left by the wayside in the construction of Europe, and they feel that Europe doesn't really line up with their expectations and needs. And I think that when we talk about the pillar, we need to provide a response to those people who have felt left by the wayside. But there are certain risks. One of the risks that we see, and I don't want to dwell on this, but I think you can understand what I'm trying to say when I talk about simplification and deregulation, and then how this works with the social issues. So simplification is not all it seems sometimes, and then, of course, there's a whole defense issue with regard to Ukraine and the Russian aggression. But we shouldn't really give the impression to our citizens that we can pump a huge amount of money into defense and take that money away from social services. And this will only strengthen resentment. I mean, you've got Russia and friends of Trump who are really denigrating us in social media and the press.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your contributions. Dear Commissioner, you have heard, some description of really unimaginable situations on practically right to collective bargaining, for situations being not improving, but on the contrary, in some of the countries, some concrete proposals, some concrete questions. Up to you. And really, I don't envy you.
Yes, I don't envy myself either. But we have to own our responsibilities, and thank you for beyond the questions, the fact that you've underlined where the emergencies are or where we need to see the really red flags. And these questions that you've made, our opinions, are going to be also reflected in our work at the Commission. You know the priorities and the policy directions that we have, and I will refer to them as I answer to you. For example, as you've mentioned here, the deterioration of collective bargaining rights, of collective agreement coverage, and in some countries, of course, we talk about deterioration, in some countries about lack of the right, in other countries of a really bad coverage which is not boosted or stimulated in the current conditions, even less so. Of course, our main tool remains currently the implementation of the minimum wage directive. And this is the exercise that we have, and I have my visit in all member states. I have this tour of all member states, which takes a bit of time because in each member state I spend 1 or 2 days, usually 2 days, to meet first with social partners, with employers and employees, then with authorities, then with other stakeholders. And I constantly discuss the implementation of our EU legislation, sometimes centrally the minimum wage directive, of course, with different reactions. And I always emphasize the innovation. And again, I praise that the minimum wage directive was able to push for stimulation or for methods to stimulate the collective bargaining coverage through a legislative tool. Now, the intention is that in the quality jobs, not only roadmap, but my intention is that it has also a subsequent package of legislation. We will also, of course, among others, cover this topic as well. So we need to continue to work from a European level with instruments that boost, that stimulate, that really push member states towards action in terms of social dialogue quality. This is something that we plan mainly through, so I would say that the heavyweight of our legislative action probably will be in the quality jobs roadmap and subsequent package. The pillar itself, because Sophia asked, we are not looking at it currently as a package of legislation, but let's see, because that's why we have the consultation, that's why we work together. Nothing is for now on or off the table. I will refer to the quality jobs roadmap because I come with it by the end of the year, and my clear intention is to tackle certain elements from health and safety in the workplace, to subcontracting issues, to collective bargaining, to algorithmic management and future of work, to tackle them in the quality jobs package. I work with my colleague on, I had this question about the costs of labor and the burden that is put on employees and the sustainability of the public pillar on pensions, on healthcare, and I work with my colleague, Commissioner for Financial Services, with Maria Luis in the project group on pensions, and I'm there to be the supporter. Of course, it's not only me. We need to create, of course, incentives in an aging continent, and incentives that we complement the public pillar with new tools. That is for sure, because the reality is that less and less people participate in the labor market, and so that the contributions diminish as well. But the public pillar, I think, is essential. It is one of the social rights. Pension is one of the key social rights. And so that's why I'm there to work with colleagues, with Maria Luis, with everybody, to make sure that we do not touch this sacrosanct right. So this is my position. If you want it cleared, then it's cleared, and that's how I work with my colleagues, and that's how we position ourselves in the Commission. Now, and with Teresa Ribera on just transition, of course, we work together very closely, and there was a question about just transition in the next MFF. There are several tools where I think we need to act to support just transition. It's also tools like, conditionalities, social conditionalities for when we grant state aids or in public procurement. We continue to. I'm not happy that we are not able yet to deliver something very concrete on these elements, because I really think that we really need to be focusing on where we can really have very fast impact. But indeed, on just transition and clean transition in the new MFF, you know the formula that we proposed. This is a budget that will offer a lot of flexibility to member states. Inside the plan, we will have social spending, at least what we have now. It amounts to 14%, 100 billion euros. We could and should, and I want to have much, much more. Whether a member state will want to invest much more in the digital as well, in the clean transition, in the socially just clean transition, is a question that will be much more, let's say, at the disposal of the member state as well. I forced a bit the discussion in the Commission when I said that, initially there was no social ambition. They say let's allow any member state to decide how much social they want to put inside their budgets, and if they want 100%, it's fine. If they want less, it's fine. And I said, no, we have to have a direction, an ambition from European level. So that's, after lots of discussions, how we reached this minimum, I would say, ambition of 100 billion, of 14%. But I think that we, during the negotiations in the next years, really need to look and be aware that we need to invest much, much more than that. And of course, I am a supporter of the idea that transition, whether it's clean, whether it's digital, must not leave anybody behind. Because the moment that we have large, vulnerable categories left behind, that transition backfires, as we have already seen, politically, socially, economically. So I think that we need to continue to be focused on the social dimension of each type of transition that we are talking about, whether it's digital, whether it's demographic, whether it's of any other sort. On the on the collaboration with the trade unions, I'm very happy to work with the trade unions, with the social partners alike. That's why we did this open consultation we do this open consultation and joint work on the quality jobs roadmap. We want to build it together so that the quality jobs roadmap should be an answer that reflects the dynamic of our times. Now, you have said it correctly. We discuss a lot about the difficult situation that our economy is in, the competitiveness of our economy, the causes of that, the factors around Europe and how we should position ourselves, the geopolitical trends, the tariff wars. We are now discussing about, what is the impact of different tariff evolutions on the job situation, on the job creation. I hope, and what I can do is to work very, very openly with social partners and with member states so that the quality job roadmap really offers a healthy and adequate response to this reality. It is my opinion that no matter how much we invest in innovation, no matter how much we would simplify, no matter how much we invest in security, we are very vulnerable if we are unable to address the creation of jobs, the working conditions inside jobs, the job shortages, and people's, in the end, attachment to democratic, to European values as they perceive it through their personal, of course, well-being. So that's what I continue to advocate in the Commission, that we need the social shield, that we need to continue to address what you said, the real concerns of people. Otherwise, all wars are already by default lost if we are unable to show how we support the individual concerns and individual needs and the well-being of each citizen. So let's put our energy, and I invite you again throughout this autumn to put our energy and work towards a good quality jobs package, where again we want to address a number of issues, from algorithmic management to health and safety in the workplace to collective bargaining. Of course, we will come next year with the mobility package, the fair labor mobility package, which will improve the working conditions, fair working conditions for many, many million of mobile workers across Europe. It's an important segment of our society. And let's try to start addressing the needs of people through these kind of responses. I put a lot of faith in the European semester process because you've mentioned some of the imbalances in some member states. There was Romania mentioned here, there was Ireland mentioned here, and the discontent that is there. That's why we have the semester. Me and Commissioner Dombrovskis, we are working together. I have the social convergence framework tool, which of course some member states feel that it's a bit of a naming and shaming instrument, but it's not that. The social convergence framework is exactly the tool where we see that there are or might appear imbalances in social investment, in social parameters and indicators, and we indicate where action needs to be taken, whether some kind of budgeting or legislation or other types of measures creates more vulnerability, more poverty, more weakness in society. We intervene and signal it. Of course, this does not seem as much, but it is what I think we are doing right now together in a package. We need to have stable finances, stable economy, but also have stable social fiber, let's say. And so this is the tool that we use, the semester, where I think that we are working rather well together. I wish that as commissioner, of course, it's an area where we have these competences split. I would be able to promise more today, a list of legislation, but we need to be really aware that we are in a very complicated and complex situation. I am going to be a supporter of investing in the competitiveness of our economies because I want us to create jobs. For example, I support investment in defense where it creates jobs. I was a fan of that. I said if a factory financed through EU money creates quality jobs, for me, this is important. It creates not just security. If the value chain is inside Europe and it means more autonomy, then I support it, of course. What I do not support is, to diminish the financing or to deregulate when we say that we simplify. Work on the 28th regime has barely started. Again, I am one of the defenders of the idea that simplification should not mean deregulation, that we should not abandon our European model, and I think that means strong rights for the workers. That's why we have shortages. That's why we have decreasing productivity, because many sectors, the workers are not empowered. So I will defend this in the next stages of our work, 28th regime or any type of work alike. But it is an overall, let's say, philosophy where we are looking at what might delay or what might create hurdles in face of innovation, and the 28th regime refers mostly to innovative companies. However, my position will of course be to continue to support the rights of the workers and a strong position for them in any type of European policy. That would be briefly my approach. So I would end with the MFF. I think the budget is the one that speaks to the people. Anything else is, people need to see how we continue to invest in education, in combating school leave, in creation of jobs, especially for the young people, in creation of housing. I think that we need, of course, the MFF starts as a proposal with the 14%. I think that we need to work together to deliver much more. I think that we need to speak together as we engage with the governments, with member states, with parliaments, with national parliaments, with, of course, national social partners. You have an ally in me. I'm we're very open to work together with you. And beyond that, I want also to mention that we will be preparing next year the first European anti-poverty strategy, which also needs to be a very strong signal politically that we are taking care of the most vulnerable, that we are budgeting for the most vulnerable. I am looking at all innovative types of approaches to support them, including by working with European financial institutions, so not just to stay in the budget, but to create tools to stimulate social investment in the most vulnerable. And this is also an important element, social investment as an investment and not as an expenditure. This is another message that I sent to ministers of finance that I managed to meet, because I also try as a commissioner not to connect just with ministers of labor or ministers of education, but also ministers of finance as well. Thank you. These would be some of my reflections. I know that it's just very general, but the idea is that we work together on these topics in the months to come.
Thank you very much. I'm actually not going to have any concluding or whichever remarks, but just would like to highlight what has been said here. We need to keep the narrative that the social rights are not just for good times, just the other way around. And in a way, for the moment, it, as Sophia mentioned, is like we just can't afford it because we are going through bad times. So this is something we are going to be definitely fighting for, really to realize that social rights and good state and good situation, decent wages, good jobs are integral part of competitiveness, which is actually what we cannot be putting against each other, competitiveness and social rights. It's a kind of 19th, 20th century approach to things. So that's something we need to bring into the arena. What has been mentioned, legislation, as this is the way, especially in some parts of Europe, how to proceed further, although we need to have proper monitoring and we need to work hard on enforcement. You mentioned that probably no hard legislation in the pipeline. We're gonna try to make you understand that at some point we need some, definitely. And as you also mentioned, there need to be a very good cooperation between the European level and the national level and the regional level and the local level, where not always is the case. So sometimes the money and the decision-making is left for the European level, and then the social consequences to the national level, where the national states are not always in line with that. For that, and I'm quite surprised it has not been mentioned here, social conditionalities in different of the things might be a way forward, at least for the interim period. But actually, I'm sure this is not the last time we are talking on this. I would like to ensure you we are backing you strongly. You can always turn to us, Group 2. We are having expertise.
Can I just clear on the no hard legislation?
Please go ahead. If you are bringing good news,
no,
definitely.
So to make, because I spoke with, yes, we will have hard legislation attached to the quality jobs roadmap and the fair mobility package. So I will work to propose. It's just that we have not thought about attaching it to the pillar, to the action plan of the pillar itself. But that does not mean it cannot happen. Just for you to know, we have in the pipeline also, or I have in the pipeline the idea to deliver legislatively as well. So at least on two directions, on quality jobs and on fair mobility.
Happy to hear that. Still, we need to be quite strict in following, observing, monitoring how this is actually implemented and which consequences it has. Thank you very much. Hope to stay in touch. As you probably might have some time to listen to the presentation of the study. Yeah. Lovely. So I would kindly ask the people presenting us the study for the moment to come up here. Charlotte and Martin. Happy to have you here.
Hi.
You can see you've got the best audience you could have.
Over there. I think it's over here.
Oh, yeah. There we are.
Happy to have you here. So the floor is yours. If you could be briefer than anticipated, it would be nice because we are slightly ahead of.
We will try to do our best on that.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Martin Clark, and I'm here with my colleague Charlotte Byrne today from Panteia, and we'll be presenting the findings from our study on the European Pillar of Social Rights, State of Play in 2024. The objective of the study was to evaluate the transposition and implementation of 4 EPSR directives, the Transparent and Predictable Working Conditions Directive, the Work-Life Balance Directive, the Adequate Minimum Wages Directive, and the Gender Balance on Company Boards Directive. We were to identify legislative gaps and enforcement barriers, highlight best practice in member states, and provide insights and recommendations ahead of the 2025 EPSR Action Review. In terms of scope, we covered 14 different member states, Austria, Belgium, Czechia, Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, Ireland, the Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Spain, and Sweden, which reflects different geographical regions of Europe and also different social models as well. I'll briefly just touch on methodology. So we carried out extensive EU-level desk research and had interviews with key EU-level stakeholders. We also carried in-depth national-level research on case law enforcement practices and policy developments. We conducted interviews and consultations with national stakeholders, and we developed national reports for each of the member states covered. We then carried out comparative policy analysis to look at best practices and refine recommendations. I will actually skip this because I think it was covered quite well in your introduction, so I will move on. So the EPSR sets out 20 rights and principles under 3 broad areas: equal opportunities, fair working conditions, and social protection. These principles were made concrete in the 2021 Porto Action Plan, which we referred to earlier, and established 3 measurable 2030 targets. The progress is tracked via the social scoreboard, while EU funds such as Next Generation EU and ESF Plus provide financial support. However, implementation remains largely based on soft governance, meaning that many commitments are not legally binding. Progress since 2021 includes delivery of 75 actions. The major directives on wages, work-life balance, and working conditions, they do represent concrete steps towards fairer labour markets and stronger protections. However, challenges remain significant. Poverty reduction is off track, adult training levels are stagnating, and the gender employment gap remains wide, with national implementation of directives being uneven and various disparities across member states. Moreover, the social scoreboard still lacks indicators on housing adequacy, homelessness, and job quality. So to truly meet the EPSR's goals, stronger enforcement and more binding commitments may be required. So we're looking at 4 EPSR directives, which are translated into concrete law. Together, they bring binding obligations in areas such as pay transparency, fair contracts, parental leave, and gender parity in decision-making. However, their impact has been mixed. Many member states have delayed transposition, precarious and non-standing workers often remained underprotected, and implementation varies widely depending on national labour systems. Structural barriers from limited administrative capacity to persistent gender stereotypes continue to undermine the full realisation of the EPSR directives.
Thank you, Martin. Good morning, everybody. And as my colleague said, my name is Charlotte Byrne. I'm just going to be taking us through some of the main findings from the implementation of the 4 directives within the scope of our study. Starting with the Transparent and Predictable Working Conditions Directive, this had a transposition deadline of the 1st of August 2022. In practice, the majority of member states missed this deadline. I'm sure all of you can see it, but the green highlighted member states represent the countries that fully transposed the directive on time. The amber or orange member states represent the member states that transposed it either with delays or with gaps. And then we have a bit of an outlier with Spain, who has still not completed transposition and is currently facing infringement proceedings initiated by the Commission. The overall picture is that the directive is now largely embedded in national frameworks, but the timeliness and the scope of transposition differ significantly, and in some cases, questions remain about the completeness or clarity of the measures adopted. So while the directive's core principles are in place across the EU, the path to that point has been far from uniform. Turning to implementation, we can see several achievements. The directive has clearly enhanced transparency in employment relationships. Workers now receive earlier and clearer information about their terms and conditions, often by the first working day. In many countries, probationary periods have been shortened, and workers with variable schedules now benefit from greater predictability. Importantly, some member states use the directive as an opportunity to go further than the EU baseline. For example, Italy and Sweden introduced stronger protections than required. And where social partners were closely involved in the process, such as in Belgium or Denmark, adoption proved smoother and the resulting frameworks enjoyed wider support. However, there are also some implementation gaps. First, the uptake of new rights has been incomplete. For instance, the right to request more secure forms of work is not always well known or easily accessible, and protections for on-demand workers remain uneven. Second, coverage of non-standard workers, particularly platform workers, seasonal labourers, and some categories of self-employed, continues to vary widely between member states. And finally, we still see ongoing non-compliance. Spain has not fully transposed the directive, and in some countries, the definitions of worker remain too narrow to capture the full intended scope of the directive. In terms of enforcement, even once rights are in the statute books, enforcement remains a major challenge. In several member states, penalties for breaches are weak. For example, flat fine caps or minor sanctions mean some employers may risk non-compliance rather than change practices. Labour inspectorates are often overstretched with limited capacity for proactive monitoring. Many workers and SMEs are still unaware of the new rights, which means that they sometimes go underused. And in many systems, enforcement relies heavily on individual complaints, which can create uneven access to justice, particularly for precarious or vulnerable workers. Our study, however, also highlights some good practices and lessons. Stronger sanctions can make a real difference. Denmark, for instance, allows compensation of up to 20 weeks' salary, which can create a meaningful deterrent. Accessible complaint systems lower barriers. For example, Ireland's Workplace Relations Commission provides quick and binding remedies without lengthy court proceedings seen in other member states. And again, where social partners are closely engaged, as in Belgium's National Labour Council, rules are more legitimate and widely respected. Awareness raising also matters. Italy has produced clear guidance for both employers and workers, while Ireland published plain language guides. And in some cases, aligning the directive with wider reforms has boosted impact. Sweden, for example, integrated the directive's provisions into a broader update of its employment protection law. So the key lesson from here is that the enforcement is not just about the rules on paper, but also the strength of sanctions, the capacity of institutions, and the accessibility of complaint mechanisms. When we've seen that when these factors are in place, that the directive's objectives are much more likely to be realized in practice. Moving on to the Work-Life Balance Directive, which had a transposition deadline of 2nd of August 2022. As with the Transparent and Predictable Working Conditions Directive, most member states missed this deadline. Only a handful managed to transpose it on time, notably Italy, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Denmark. For the majority, adoption came much later, often through omnibus labour law reforms or bundled packages, including multiple directives at once. Spain, again, stands out as the slowest mover, and despite initial steps, it only reached full compliance in July of this year, and that was after facing infringement proceedings from the Commission. Looking at implementation, the directive has delivered several important new rights that are now universal across the EU. All member states now guarantee at least 10 days of paternity leave. Parents have access to at least 4 months of non-transferable parental leave each, and carers are entitled to a minimum of 5 days of leave per year. In many cases, member states went beyond these minimum requirements. Italy and Sweden already had longer or better compensated parental leave and built upon that. Belgium extended paternity leave to 20 days, which is double the EU minimum. Spain broadened the definition of carers leave to also include not just relatives, but members of the same household. In Poland, father uptake of parental leave increased 5-fold in just a few years. And across the EU, awareness of entitlements among both employers and workers is rising, which is critical for long-term impact. Where social dialogue was strong, adoption was smoother. Denmark's so-called 24-24 model balances leave between parents and is a good example of how national systems adopted the directive in ways that fit their traditions while respecting EU requirements. Implementation has not been without its shortcomings. In several member states, provisions have been delayed or only partially introduced. Spain, for example, did not ensure paid parental leave until this year, while Germany still lacks an explicit guarantee of 10 days paternity leave in its legislation. Coverage is another issue. Many non-standard workers, such as the self-employed and platform workers, are still excluded from entitlements. This risks leaving exactly those groups most in need of support. Cultural barriers also persist. Uptake of parental leave by men remains relatively low in many countries due to enduring gender stereotypes, financial disincentives, and concerns about career progression. Even where legal entitlements exist, workplace culture often discourages fathers from using them fully. Finally, on flexibility, implementation is uneven. Some member states have only partially recognized the right to request flexible working, for instance, limiting it mainly to remote work without extending it to other forms such as flexible hours or adapted schedules. This narrows the potential impact of the directive in practice. In terms of enforcement, it remains patchy. Most countries rely on inspectorates or courts without dedicated monitoring. Sanctions are often modest and awareness campaigns limited. As a result, many workers don't know their rights or hesitate to use them. However, we also discovered some good practices and lessons, going beyond the minimum standards of the directive, like Italy's extended paid parental leave, Belgium's 20-day paternity leave, or Spain's inclusive carers leave, as well as social partner involvement leading to smoother adoption, such as in Denmark. And critically, cultural change requires more than legislation. Awareness, incentives, and supportive workplace practices are needed to make a work-life balance a reality, not just on paper. In terms of transposition, it's again been quite, this is the Adequate Minimum Wages Directive. It's again been quite uneven. Some member states managed to transpose by the November 24 deadline, while others delayed or took partial steps or leaned on their collective bargaining systems instead of statutory reforms. A striking exception is Denmark and Sweden, which, as I'm sure we're all aware, have refused transposition altogether and are challenging the directive's legality at the Court of Justice. Despite these differences, the directive has spurred significant minimum wage increases in several countries, driven the introduction of new indexation formulas to guarantee regular and transparent updates, and strengthened the role of social dialogue through wage commissions and tripartite consultations. Transparency around wage policy has improved, and in some cases, governments are going beyond the directive's baseline with commitments to transition towards living wages. On implementation, there are several gaps. Many countries with low collective bargaining coverage have not adopted the required action plans. This includes Ireland, Czechia, and Romania. Some still allow youth sub-minimum rates or exclude atypical workers. And in several states, wages still fall short of EU adequacy benchmarks, and transparency systems remain underdeveloped. Public procurement is another gap. and it could be a powerful compliance tool. However, it's rarely leveraged. Enforcement is a critical challenge. Labour inspectorates are understaffed, violation rates are high in low-wage sectors, and informal work creates blind spots. Few awareness campaigns have been run, meaning many workers remain unaware of their rights. Despite these challenges, our study highlights a number of good practices that offer useful lessons. Countries with very high collective bargaining coverage demonstrate that adequacy can be achieved without statutory minimum wages, provided that collective agreements are broad and inclusive. These systems also illustrate the directive's flexibility in accommodating different national models. Independent commissions, as in Ireland and Germany, also strengthen credibility. Ambitious living wage plans, strong sanctions, and active social partner involvement all contribute to more sustainable implementation. Moving on to our last directive, the Gender Balance on Company Boards Directive. This had a deadline of December 2024, but compliance has been uneven. Some countries transposed on time, often building on previous existing quota laws, while many delayed and some are still pending. In some cases, political opposition has either slowed or blocked adoption altogether. And despite these challenges, the overall trend is positive. Women's representation on listed company boards has risen sharply, with many countries already meeting or exceeding the directive's 40% benchmark. Early adopters like France, Italy, and Belgium now have world-leading levels of female directors, while voluntary initiatives also helped push progress in places like Ireland. Spain went even further and have embedded parity rules beyond corporate boards only. In terms of implementation, it still faces some gaps. Many laws focus only on non-executive boards, leaving executive positions far behind. Sanctions vary widely, with some relying only on reputational pressure, which may be too weak. And in several countries, transposition has been minimalist, and supporting measures to build a pipeline of female leaders are lacking. Enforcement also varies. Some countries use strict measures like the empty chair principle or substantial financial penalties, while others rely on naming and shaming. Regulators also often lack the resources to monitor compliance effectively, and reporting cycles mean real enforcement won't kick in until 2026. This one was a mistake. Yes, of course.
Okay, so just to briefly look at some of the cross-cutting findings. Across the 4 directives, you see that transposition has been uneven. Working conditions and work-life balance directives were broadly transposed, but often late, while minimum wages and gender balance directives sparked more political resistance, you could say, especially in countries protective of national competences. Implementation depends on national baselines quite a lot, where rights already existed, and changes were incremental elsewhere, where significant new entitlements were introduced. But we can see there's some gaps that exist, particularly in covering non-standard workers and encouraging men's uptake of leave. In terms of enforcement, mostly relies on existing inspectorates in courts, which are often under-resourced and reactive. And awareness among workers and small employers is low, limiting uptake. At a horizontal level, subsidiarity debates, capacity constraints, and the degree of political will explain much of the divergence across countries. In terms of recommendations, which we came from our report, across directives, success depends generally on closing national gaps in enforcement, awareness and inclusiveness. Governments should move beyond piecemeal transposition by adopting national EPSR strategies tied to 2030 targets. Strengthening inspectorates, engaging social partners and raising awareness among SMEs and vulnerable workers are crucial. Reliable data collection and annual reporting will make progress measurable and accountable. For the Working Conditions Directive, the priority is to extend rights to precarious workers, enforce them robustly, and provide clear procedures for transition to secure jobs. EU-level toolkits and funding can support this. For the Work-Life Balance Directive, stronger financial incentives and cultural campaigns are needed to boost fathers' uptake, alongside broader carers' leave and fair handling of flexible work requests. EU monitoring, benchmarking and investment in care infrastructure will be essential to make these rights meaningful. The Minimum Wages Directive requires systematic adequacy checks, stronger collective bargaining and tougher enforcement, especially in low coverage countries. The Board's directive needs urgent and robust transposition with sanctions and talent pipeline development to ensure real impact. And finally, looking at the future vision, the EU should consider stronger horizontal enforcement framework that sets ambitious post-2030 goals, moving towards a social Europe 2040 that closes gaps like in-work poverty and gender equality once and for all. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, both of you. Sorry for being pushy time-wise
No,
a little bit.
It's a large study with lots to cover as well.
It is a large study. Not everyone did have the chance by now to read it properly. But I mean, the findings and the summary you actually made also in this presentation, I would say, in a way, to have been expected on the lack of enforcement, the capacities of the inspectorates, poorer than expected coverage for the non-standard workers. So it just shows where a kind of, real leeway for the moment is and stays now to be focused to. Is just my first evaluation. I just got the copy of the study on Friday, so didn't get into that too much. But in a way still, and I just have to mention it here, because on the Adequate Minimum Wages Directive, we were very much, hoping in, put a lot of effort into that, has been in my country, Czechia, implemented. With the outcome that 4 to 8 so-called guaranteed wages, which served as minimum wages, and it was clear they just abolished. So a number of people just fell to the basic minimum wage, so it has, in a way, adverse effect than expected. And the current government, which actually just gonna stay there for 1 month, and we are having elections there, is really proud of showing that they increased the indexation going to be lower than promised, and then actually they committed to. So in a way, even with, and I find it a very successful initiative, this directive. With this success on European level, still the national implementation and the way how it is treated still needs to be questioned and followed up and really controlled and monitored properly. Of course, the social partners are the best positioned to do so if they are allowed to do so. I'm not going to deliver too much more on this. If there are any urgent comments or questions to the authors of the study, the time and space is here and now. Okay, Jack, I can see Jack. Please do not develop too much because we are already, and Marie-Carmen, yes, you have to go. So let me, before starting with this debate, thank Commissioner very much again.
Thank you.
Hoping to have chance to see her in a near future and ensure her about our full support to what you are doing.
Thank you for the support.
Thank you so much, Roxana.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we start with Jack. I've got Marie-Carmen. Still anyone else in for the moment? No, thank you. So Jack, please go ahead.
Thank you, Lucy. Well, I was hoping to get in before the Vice President left, but because I think she could be forgiven for wondering what this guy from Ireland was talking about, given how good Ireland looks in the presentation. But it's a classic example of how things are not what they seem. For example, on the slides dealing with the transposition of the Minimum Wage Directive, Ireland comes up first, transposed, everything is grand, honky-dory, etc., so on. But behind that, the reality is that they transposed it. And when it comes to an action plan, we don't need an action plan because we already meet all the criteria because we have a voluntary system and the employers don't volunteer to participate. So what can we do? So they have the right to veto the whole thing. And there's lots of complementary remarks in relation to some of the other institutions that litter the landscape of Ireland around the whole social dialogue architecture. But if you look very closely at them, they all facilitate union avoidance, all of them. And that's the way the infrastructure is designed. For example, we have a lovely, glistening low-pay commission. Looks good, but what do? You pack it with people so as to ensure that it produces nothing. And reports like this say how wonderful it is and all that. I would say if the Vice President was listening, I'm sure she was, carefully to the presentation. And this is not a criticism of the presentation, by the way. I meant to compliment you on it. But if the Vice President was listening, she was saying that Irish guy was drinking a lot last night, given his remarks earlier. But one thing that maybe it could have benefited from, and I'll finish on this, in relation, for example, to the issue of collective bargaining, is to look at what is you looked at the level, but what is the trend over a number of years? And that reveals a lot. But I didn't mean to be critical of your work or your presentation. Congratulations on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack. Mari Carmen, please go ahead.
Bueno, yo quería felicitar por el estudio.
Yes, I'd like to congratulate you on your study and your presentation. And of course, thank you. I'd like to congratulate the Secretariat and Lucy in particular for organising today's meeting. And I really liked this, I must say, because you referred to the need for statistics. And that is often something we don't talk about. And I think it is crucial because ultimately, when the political assessments are carried out at European and country-by-country level, there are some things which are on the sidelines or they're marginalised in statistics because there aren't enough by way of indicators. And so there may not be, they may not take up a large part, and so they may not have much of an impact on the study, and they may not be in the real political focus, and so they tend to be sidelined somewhat. And with that in mind, you mentioned homeless people. And in Europe, there is a real fight ongoing to combat homelessness. It's been ongoing for years, and time again, we repeat that these indicators and this methodology needs to be included within the framework of social indicators, because we've noticed that there is an increasing trend towards homelessness of working people who are homeless. And this is something which is of real concern to me, and I think it's really important that that is focused on. And then there's another issue too, which I think is addressed as well. And this doesn't really have much of a bearing on the statistics, because my feeling is that we have many different studies and action plans, and time again, they take stock of people in atypical work and the place that they take up, and also new forms of work, new types of jobs. And quite often, the coverage of those people is not covered by current rules. And in the Workers Group, we are working on a study, an opinion, an own initiative opinion, in fact, in our group, focusing specifically on the gaps, the coverage gaps for people who have atypical work and new forms of work. And I think that's a really important issue. And so I would agree with Jack in that I do think that it's important that this issue is addressed, because not only does this have a bearing on the action plan, but I think it should be factored into all our social security policies, because when it comes to the new types of work, new forms of jobs which are emerging, for example, platform work under the new directive, it doesn't cover the necessary social security protection that would be required in order to protect all these people properly. And so that's one of the challenges facing us. I haven't actually read the study, but I would congratulate you, because I think the two questions that are really so important, where are the gaps and where are the real shortcomings, I think those are addressed. But I think there are some issues which may not seem to have much of an impact, but they do need to be focused on, because obviously we are concerned about the welfare and well-being of everyone looking ahead to the future. Thank you.
Marie-Carmen, actually back to you for any initial reaction on the comments.
Yes, thank you to both of you for your, well, rather comments more than questions. I'll try to be brief because we don't have much time, but Jack, I believe, Mr. O'Connor, thank you so much for your compliments on our study and for highlighting the lack of collective bargaining coverage, as well as the sort of ongoing situation, or well, for a bit more of a context for everybody as well, the final report is actually a synthesis of 14 country reports we have done. I myself worked on the one from Ireland, so I'm very aware of I think, just on the top of my head, in the past 40 to 50 years, collective bargaining coverage has gone from something like 60% to 20%. A bit high. And there is, I believe, a constitutional right to collective bargaining. However, as you mentioned before, the employer is not obliged to actually engage. And this has been upheld by national courts as well. So I feel like our report does do its best to try to show this sort of discrepancy within the Irish framework. I hope it does, at least. Sorry, excuse me? With mirrors, yes, that's been something we've heard quite often during the course of our study. So yeah, I would implore everybody to really read the report, because indeed when you see the first graphic that Ireland is green, it's implemented something, it does have a bit more nuance to it. And then I think it was Miss Barrera Chamar, I'm so sorry if I've butchered your name. Thank you so much as well for your compliments and your comments. And indeed, something that we noticed across many member states is that there is just a general lack of data, statistics, and this is something that could provide a lot more insight into where gaps are, which then can lead to better policy choices. So thank you for pointing that out. And again, thank you, everybody, for your time. I hope that you enjoy our report. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact either Martin or myself. I believe our email addresses were up, and maybe later the slides will be shared. I'm not sure. But thank you. Great. They will be great. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Actually, I guess we are going to be working with the study, much more than it looks like for the moment. As I said, people just receive it at the end of last week, I guess. But it's definitely, I find it extremely useful, and I mean, all the things we could be improving, you are pinpointing in a brilliant way. So thanks a lot for that. Thank you. Thank you. So now I would like to ask the participants of the panel on the new action plan on the implementation of the European Pillar of Social Rights, what initiatives means. We have heard Commissioner, we have been presented the study. In a way, we all know quite, sorry. This is just for slim people.
Lucky we're all slim.
So now is the best time actually to debate, to discuss what we as Workers Group would like to see as the further steps in the implementation of the pillar as such, in the concrete activities, concrete initiatives we would like to see, we would be supporting, which are realistic, which are less realistic, and so on. In the meantime, I can see the panelists coming. I am extremely happy to have you all at the table here in this moment of the time. So although I did have a very sophisticated system on introductory address from all of you and my questions towards you, I don't think we would be that successful in this. But anyhow, starting with Denis Genton, the European Commission Director responsible for the European Pillar of Social Rights Strategy. Extremely happy to have you here. Of course, you've got a little bit more than the other participants, but please limit yourself to some 10 minutes. I know it's not easy, but you are European Commission official. You need to be, really good in that. And then I will start with some, or try to frame your contribution with the questions. You know them in advance, but the concrete focus, let's agree later on. But without any further delay, Denis, please, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, the members, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to join this panel to discuss the new Pillar Action Plan. And many thanks for all the contributions that this House has provided so far. They will obviously help us and enrich our own review. So I know that you are keen to hear what we have heard during the consultation and what will be in the new action plan. As you know, the consultation, that was already highlighted this morning by the Executive Vice President, the consultation is still ongoing. In fact, the public consultation and call for evidence will remain open until the 10th of September, and I hope that you will help us by encouraging your networks to respond to it. Therefore, my main message today is actually that the Commission is still on the listening mode. It would be premature for me to try to summarize the replies and views that we have received so far, and certainly to soon to depict what will be in the new action plan. So I'm sorry to disappoint you slightly, but I still believe we can have a good discussion about where we are and what is needed. So earlier this morning, you've heard the Executive Vice President explain clearly the rationale for the new action plan and what kind of Europe, social Europe, we are striving for. From the discussion or contributions we have seen so far, and this was as well highlighted this morning, I think we agree or we see a consensus that competitiveness and social progress go hand in hand. We also know, and this is a fact, that even since the first action plan in 2021, more tensions and challenges have emerged. But of course, this does not mean that we abandon the commitment to implement the Pillar's 20 principles, quite actually the reverse. In fact, one thing that you can count on is that the three EU 2030 social targets on employment, training and poverty reduction will remain firmly at the heart of the new action plan. They are as relevant today as they were in 2021. In the study that the colleagues from Panteia just presented, it highlights that accelerated and coordinated action will be needed to bridge the gap, I'm quoting the study, to bridge the gap between the commitments and outcomes by 2030. Indeed, it is crucial. Is that everybody, member states, social partners, civil society, regions, etc., keeps fully focused on implementing and enforcing what has already been agreed. There is also a consensus that the new action plan does not make the current one null and void. It will complement it. It will address any gaps that are identified and it will also reflect the current political priorities. It will also, of course, be in keeping with the Commission's pledge for simplification, transparency, and consulting widely. We know, and this is something that we have explained on several occasions, that it is too early to assess the outcomes of the first action plan. And today it's still early, even if we have already some feedback. But we got the point, and we will continue to work on evaluation as well. So this is why, in fact, not being in a very in a position to assess fully the first action plan, we have launched this very wide consultation in the spring. So we have been, and the executive vice president, she recalled all the visits she made to the member states. So we have been engaging with stakeholders group by group, seeking the views of member states. We launched a call for evidence and public consultation. All of this feedback will help us prepare the review of the 2021 action plan and to shape the new one. While we do not yet have conclusions from this process, we got some messages which we believe are quite clear. The 2021 action plan and the initiatives that it encompassed have helped push the social agenda and increase people's awareness. There have been noticeable improvements in areas such as training, social protection, and equal opportunities, while keeping in mind the need to simplify. There are still gaps in reinforcing social Europe that could be addressed, such as access to affordable housing, quality jobs, and combating discrimination. We have heard about the challenges that Europe has been facing for some time, such as the greening of our economy and our aging workforce, as well as ones which are now more prevalent than in the past, like ensuring the use of AI in the workplace is fair, and how to protect workers' mental health. Already in the Commission work programme, as well as the missions letter that were published last week, 1 year ago, given to commissioners, you will find some of the concrete social proposals that will feature in the action plan. For example, the quality jobs roadmap, the EU anti-poverty strategy, and the fair labour mobility package. Others may be needed, and we will reflect on all the feedback we have received. At the same time, we have in mind the negotiations on the next budget, MFF, Multi-Annual Financial Framework, and ensuring that social remains at the heart and meets our ambitions. In the study that we have just seen, you also noted that more awareness raising is needed to explain what the EU is doing to further employment and social rights in Europe. This is indeed a major, quite actually recurrent challenge that we will keep working on. The same goes for sharing of best practices. I think this is where Europe can shine, by helping our neighbours make improvements through showing them what has worked well in their region or country or sector. This is precisely the ethos of the platform to combat homelessness, for example. Finally, I would like to bring your attention to an important event taking place in the next weeks, the Porto Social Forum. This is an event that will be organized by our Portuguese friends, and I would like to thank the Minister Palma Ramalho for that. This is an event that will take place on 18th, 19th of September. This event, you know, takes place every 2 years, and this year the theme is quality jobs in a competitive social Europe. So under this overarching theme, we will discuss fair labour mobility, combating poverty, work-life balance, and a possible fourth target on quality jobs. So this already gives you an idea of what could follow, what could be on our agenda in the coming few months. So there again, the Commission will be in listening mode to soak up all the ideas and issues that are brought to the table. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. If I should pick just one information for the moment. The public consultation is still open. I guess we all could still do some of our homework because that could, in a way, reflect the national realities, the national specificities we have heard just a while ago here. Actually, to give our members as much time for debate and contributions, because that should be an important part of our debate here today. I would like all the panelists, starting with Thea, happy to see you after the holiday, Thea, the ETUC Confederal Secretary, really to stick to the 5 minutes deadline and to focus mainly very briefly on the lessons learned and areas for improvement, but especially on the political insights and possible initiatives and measure for the new action plan, because as we mentioned here, the time is here. We are in a perfect moment of the time to be able to deliver and to make proposals based on our expertise. So, Thea, I guess I don't need to put you the question on the involvement of social partners in the process. You're going to mention it anyhow. But please try to stick to the 5 minutes deadline. Floor is yours.
Here, change with me. Change with me. No problem.
Maybe you sit like that. Yeah,
Speak. Does it work?
Yeah? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lucy. Nice to see you as well, and all of
You
the...
have to sit, otherwise you will be watching me.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you so much. Hi, Lucy. Hello, dear colleagues. It's nice to see you as well. And indeed, as you know, for the ETUC, European Pillar of Social Rights, it's one of the main priorities. Not only because we have been always advocating to reinforce the social dimension of European Union, but especially now in this changing geopolitical situation where indeed other debates are hijacking the priorities and when the switches are trying to be made. So we are looking very closely indeed in the evaluation of the European Pillar of Social Rights, and moreover, we are pushing for an ambitious new action plan. And maybe, looking at the lessons learned, what we have seen is that, indeed, in previous time, we have seen a lot of important initiatives that still, yes, needs to be transposed, need to be implemented, and need to be reinforced. And this is why also as our four-folded strategy at ETUC, we have developed that also the new action plan needs to first and foremost focus on monitoring, implementation, and reinforcement. We need to make sure that adequate minimum wage directive is being implemented everywhere and that collective bargaining coverage indeed increases and reaches at least 80% in each and every member state. We need to make sure that gender pay transparency is being transposed. And exactly in the current debate of deregulation, we see the attempts to water it down, to even cut some of the provisions out of it. We need to make sure that platform work directive that has been implemented is being properly transposed. And again, here, in the name of deregulation, simplification, we are worrying that also the attempts to water down this directive, basically it's putting all of the achievement that we have managed to secure under the threat. So, as I said, first plan for the future is to really safeguard what we have achieved in the previous action plans, in the previous mandate of the Commission, and to work on ensuring the level playing field for all. But of course, this will not be enough. So yes, indeed, when it comes to the new proposal and new legislative initiatives, we see very much that action plan of the European Pillar of Social Rights needs to go hand in hand with quality job roadmap that has been announced, that brings the most tangible promise to the working people. And here as ETUC, we have been very clear. We need new legislative initiatives. We needed to address the transitions. So for this, we need just transition directive. We need a directive that is going to address AI and algorithmic management and ensure human in control principle. We need to address exploitation in subcontracting chains. So yes, we need a directive that is going to ensure joint and limited several liability across the subcontracting chain. We need to address mental health at workplace. And for this, we're calling for a directive on psychosocial risk that is going to also address stress and online harassment. We are very happy that there has been some progress already happening in the past weeks, actually, regarding the directive on telework and right to disconnect. So we hope that we can very soon see some kind of result in this area. We are working very much on public procurement directive, on the revision of it. So we hope that this is going to be addressed as well, along with social conditionalities, because we cannot use the public funds to finance bad employers. We cannot invest it in the employers that are engaged in trade union busting or that do not comply with national or global standards. And yes, we need to invest more in securing jobs, in banning zero-hour contracts, in ensuring quality traineeships, and basically investing in quality jobs. So we have very clear ideas what needs to be done, and we really hope that the European Commission is going to deliver on this. And as I said, we have, along with the new legislative initiatives, also proposals for real investment in quality jobs, because social and regional cohesion is crucial also for the competitiveness. We cannot talk about competitiveness if some of the regions are lagging behind. And this is why exactly the MFF is going to be crucial. And yes, just to finish up, because I know that I should be shorter, when it comes to the governance, we do expect better coordination with the social partners, more involvement, of course, through European semester, through social scoreboards, but also really including the social partners and involved at the European level, national level, regional and local level. Only with this we can find the mutual understanding how indeed social Europe it's also going to support competitiveness, but not in a way that workers would pay the price for the competitiveness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thea. Very clear, straightforward, what the other side of the industry, the social partners, actually see and what the views are. Mattias Dahl from BusinessEurope, Deputy Director General of the Confederation of Swedish Enterprises. Same questions, any important uptakes from the current action plan? Any good proposals for the upcoming one, and the social partners' involvement in the development and implementation? Floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Social rights, social partners, social affairs, the labor market. Indeed, I'd like just to start with, it matters. It matters a lot to us Europeans. It is in the core of our society, and it's something that sets us apart from the rest of the world. It's something worthwhile protecting and developing. I'm coming from Sweden. I spent at least 30 years negotiating with unions and entering into collective agreements. Just saying that to my Irish colleague there, 100 of them, and it works really good. However, it's really difficult to get it right. It's not easy. There are very different perspectives, strong opinions. To do it, to strike the best balance, to find the spot when society gains the most, is not easy. And to do it on a European level, it's even harder. We have so many different variations on our labor market, like we heard before today. So it's something that needs to be respected as a difficult task. The current plan, the last 5 years, has not always done that. This is something that needs to change. We need to have more respect for the social partners and the national difference systems. The EU must stop overreaching, which it has done sometimes. It must stop encourage both national and social partners' competence. It must respect social partners as independent players that are valid. So the good news is that this works quite successfully, as shown by several member countries. So it's already in practice, and best practice is something to be looked at in the new plan. How to promote it from a European level to make it happen in more countries. Furthermore, the EU has failed to take sufficient account of the impact of its legislation when it comes to European business communities' competitiveness. I know this is the buzzword today. I've heard it several times, so many times that even I, as coming from the business community, find it, but it's very important. It is a fact that we all know it, that we have hurt compared to other countries. This is something that hurts us, all Europeans, not only the business community. It hurts everybody. The Draghi report, the Letter report, I can go on. So it's a fact. This must change. Change sometimes is hard, it's difficult, but we need to put competitiveness and attractiveness to invest in Europe at the core and center of every debate. This doesn't mean that we should take away the social part. I don't know who said it, but it's not one versus the other. They are together, at least in Europe. Legislation in Europe has sometimes, not always, but sometimes been too fast and too voluminous, whatever you like it or not, as the legislation itself. But legislation must be given sufficient time to be implemented. Countries need to have the sufficient time. It needs to be assessed and adjust when needed. This is something that we think that the Commission could do a little bit better next time. The new action plan, as I said, must be formed on the basis that there cannot be a social Europe without jobs. And there cannot be jobs, especially quality jobs, without a strong competitive European business community. We face a stiff and hard competition from the United States, from China, and from other countries in the world. We are faced with a labor and skill shortage. That's a fact. We need to address these issues and put them at the center of the debate. The new plan must contribute to deliver on the competitiveness compass, and we need to have an overall simplification agenda. And I know this is the tricky part, because then we enter into what is deregulation and what is not, what is simplification. Very, very difficult. Let's discuss. That is the European way. Let's discuss, let's find a way forward. In all modesty, Business Europe has put on 68 suggestions for simplification. You may not like them all, but let's hope that you like some of them, or at least can accept them. It's important that we take several steps, that the new plan respects social partners fully all the time, not only when they are on stage, our politicians. They must do it also when they leave the stage in practice. They need to promote social partners who are strong and independent and who can represent their members and do the best. One important subject that will mean a lot to help us out when it comes to labor and skill shortage is that the new plan has to put more focus on enhancing and helping women's participation on the labor market. If we have a skill and shortage of people in the labor force, we must make it accessible to everybody in Europe. So this is something that needs to be promoted and put forward in the next plan. Furthermore, the plan must focus on investing in skills. Quality jobs, like we heard, is going to be at the center of the Commission's work, and that needs a lot of investment. So reskilling, upskilling, it's a must, and there's a lot to be done here. ESF plus resources are there for the taking and for the use. So let's use them and earmark them for upskilling and reskilling. We also need common rules to be established on the EU level when it comes to recognition and validation of qualifications and skills from third country nationals. That would be a big thing when it comes to simplification from a business point of view. So to conclude, the new plan needs to give greater consideration to the economic dimension for business, must give greater consideration to social partners and to different national perspectives and conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Without any further, I give the floor to Guillaume Afla, SGI Europe Head of Social Affairs. Please go ahead for your 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. So please let me first hope that you all enjoyed a nice summer. And many thanks to Group 2 for their invitation to discuss now at the beginning of this semester the new action plan for the pillar of social rights. So SGI Europe is an organization that represents employers of services of general interest. As a reminder, meaning services such as housing, healthcare, education, but also local government, and we are all looking, when we think about the pillar of social rights and its connected action plans, especially at the chapter 3 on social protection, which is quite close to how we developed, what we need to think about in the future, how we prepare ourselves and how we deliver for citizens. So now we are discussing the new action plan. It's always a bit difficult, and we had quite a few opportunities in the first semester to discuss between social partners, but also with the European Commission, what to expect with the new action plan. It is a bit difficult to discuss because we have not seen yet an evaluation of the previous action plan, and I welcome that with the EESC you have now developed an implementation report looking at the 4 directives, because indeed what we lack as knowledge is what happened to the many initiatives that were developed with the first action plan and since the origin of the pillar of social rights. So that being said, we can already imagine what lessons we can learn from the first action plan. I think for SGI Europe, what we look forward for this new action plan is that now there are many strategies that we've been discussing the whole morning that are coming from the European Commission in the social policy field. We discussed the anti-poverty strategy that will come, the quality jobs roadmap. We have also things that we would need to connect to the action plan, like the preparedness strategy that has been coming forward a bit earlier, all these that could be connected to the new action plan. So what we would ask is for the action plan to create a governance framework, but also to connect better all these initiatives with the investment and the funds that they will need to be implemented in practice. Because indeed, we believe that implementation will be the most important aspect of this new action plan, not new legislative initiative. Implementation, address implementation gap, provide guidance for social partners on the national level to have them better contribute directly or negotiate some of these directives that we will try to implement, but also foster capacity building for social partners, which is a constant need in most of the countries and especially in some of them. So this is in general what I would focus on for the new action plan, but I fully support obviously the comments made by Mattias on how do we address the Porto target on education and training, where we really need to progress, including better use of the ESF+, better direct investment. But the one I would like to focus more on is the poverty target, where we are very poor performer, only 1.6 million people in terms of people reduced in situation of poverty, next to the objective of 15 million. So where do we see the risk? I mean, what we do and what we try to focus on in SGI Europe is how do we tackle now the climate crisis? Do we keep on tackling the climate crisis? We've all seen during the summer break the wildfire that will definitely have tremendous consequences on the lives of many people in terms of production, GDP development, poverty, job destruction. And we need to consider how we prepare for floods. We need to consider how we prepare for heat episodes, also in working conditions. And the fear we have is that the European Union and member states are losing a bit the priority of tackling climate change, whether we talk about just transition, fair transition, clean transition, it's about preparing for the transition. And when we look at recent investments, for instance, I think a recent report showed that we invested in 2023 less than half what we should invest in terms of being prepared for the future. It's not, for me, a digression too much about the action plan, because the action plan is very much about putting all things together. It's about fostering just transition. It's about access to services. It's about housing affordability. It's about clean mobility. So that's why the new action plan should also foster new initiatives, new measurements, and ensure that the European semester is more dedicatedly dedicated to addressing these early changes. Sorry, just. So yeah, I will conclude on saying the MFF will be a crucial instrument, but the European semester, with all the new discussions now on fiscal consolidation in every country, where we refuse to have again whether a climate investment, social policy, as the Vice President mentioned this morning, should no longer be considered as antagonistic with fiscal, let's say, discipline. So we should have politically, the Commission really supporting, and this can be part of the action plan on the pillar of social rights, a dialogue with the national member states where the Commission would consider social investment or investment in climate change as a necessity in order to reach the debt and deficit objectives. That no longer it is seen as a problem to reach them, but really as one way, one concrete way to reach them. One word on collective bargaining, absolutely, that the action plan should continue with the recommendation, implementing the recommendation on strengthening social dialogue, but also the Pact for Social Dialogue and how we will continue this. We need constant connection to what social partners need to do, including social partners being more present in all the social directives. In terms of implementation clause, so that social partners have more and more margin to negotiate directly at the national level the implementation of some of the directives, so that it's in their hands. That would ensure a more successful, I believe, implementation and more balanced and fair implementation of the legislative text that we have. Sorry if I've been a bit long. I stop here.
Thank you very much. It's so nice to see people being enthusiastic and very much in the topic, right people at the table. Let me move to Estelle. Sorry for not being able to pronounce your last name. Ceulemans. Easy. Our Belgian colleague, trade unionist, member of the SND, the coordinator of the EMPL committee, so the best person to debate these issues with. So Estelle, same questions being put to you, and really try to keep to 5 minutes.
I will try. I first apologize because I will express myself in French if it's possible, my mother language. Donc voilà. Tout d'abord, je voudrais.
First of all, I would very much like to thank the EESC for raising this issue of the implementation, drawing up of this new action plan for the European Pillar of Social Rights. Two things, and I haven't had the opportunity to really dive into some of the issues that have been raised and presentations that have been made. For the time being, we're consulting. We have a broad-ranging consultation, but a policy is based on facts, and so I think it's very important to have an evaluation of the 21 principles and the implementation of the 21 principles of the Pillar of Social Rights, and not just the 3 targets. I would like to thank those here today for the opinion and for the ESC and how they're working on the upcoming action plan. I've become familiar with it, and I work on a lot of position taking based on some of the issues raised in the opinion. I'd like to talk about the European Pillar of Social Rights and the fact that it's more topical than ever. At this point in time, we're in the face of a lot of geopolitical, social, economic uncertainty. And when we know that for the Commission, the issue of security is primordial, but I think we need to talk about internal security, because the European Pillar of Social Rights is really an issue about an issue related to internal security. And, you know, in a global way, we need to make sure that European values are championed and that there's a better distribution of wealth. But then, of course, there are a lot of democratic challenges underfoot. There are a lot of people in our populations who don't have jobs or are at risk of unemployment. And if we don't do anything, we're going to end up with 27 right-wing extreme governments in Europe. And so social Europe is really a question of democracy and, by extension, an issue of internal security in Europe. Of course, lawmakers have to deal with the issue of competitiveness. We've got the Draghi report. We talk a lot about simplification, and that's true. And this is something that we've seen over the past months. And personally, I fear omnibus legislation because we see the Commission coming forth with laws, these omnibus laws, which were voted without an impact assessment because of urgency. And there are my colleagues from Business Europe who've said that in principle we need to take better consideration of the impact of decisions made at the European level for our companies. But what we're talking about deregulation, we're talking about simplification measures with deregulate and have an impact on protection of our societies, the environment, and so forth. And so without that, we see that there's a lot of right-wing support and like a shift to the right wing in order to get these things through. We're looking really at the heart of regulation. This is something that we've done with a series of regulations that have been unraveled because of the omnibus. And I think that we're all against red tape, but we need to look at how this is impacting regulation writ large. And the European Pillar of Social Rights is more topical than ever, as I said earlier. Now, we need to have an evaluation about the implementation and the three key indicators. We have our targets for 2030. We're at 70% employment, but what type of jobs? We really need to think about the quality of jobs. This is key. And there's the quality jobs roadmap from the Commission. And I think in terms of competitiveness, we need to look at the quality of jobs. We're seeing a lot of lack of jobs in certain sectors, and it really isn't just about a skills mismatch or a skills gap, but there are a lot of people who don't want to work in these situations of lower pay and worse conditions. And then, of course, there's access to training for 60% of workers. I heard the Commission talk about this, and they said, well, 40% is already quite good. 40% is, basically every worker every other year. But generally, it's always the same people who have access to training. And so what we really want is a true right to training. And then another compelling issue is combating poverty and getting 15 million people, including 5 million children, out of poverty. Unfortunately, in Europe, we've got 93 million people at risk of poverty, 21%, 1 out of every 5 people at risk of poverty. This is also something that gets people moving towards the extreme right. We've got low-skilled workers, unemployed people. These are people who are really at risk. And so this action plan really needs to focus on cross-cutting issues and the 21 principles. We should not overlook not a single one of those. And there's the need to be more ambitious. What I think is important here is to have more and more ambitious indicators. They need to be based on the rights and needs rather than objectives, because these objectives are really, for example, the employment rate is just a number. It doesn't look at the quality of jobs. And then, there's, for example, a true right to training. Also, childcare. And this is something that was raised earlier and really has to do with the evaluation that you carried out. The Barcelona objectives on childcare to 0 to 3 years of age. I mean, how can we get gender parity if there's a constant penalty for maternity and this, 1 out of 3 children being in proper childcare? So there is really a cost of inequality that's estimated at 390 billion euros, and so we have to address the issue of the lack of competitiveness. So we need more and more ambitious indicators, and some of the speakers had mentioned the issue. We need to have a more cross-cutting and integrated approach. We need to look at the Commission side, all of the issues at hand. This would link into all 21 principles. Of course, the issue of housing is one that's we're specifically keen on. We now have a commissioner for housing. You can't have a proper life and health if you don't have proper housing, and so housing is a key issue. The budget issue was raised as well. Unfortunately, we fear that the MFF is not really focusing on social issues. This is something we saw previously, the European social funds being dedicated to defense. We feel that's unacceptable because that is not the aim of the ESF, so we need to focus on the budget, the issue of inequality, the issue of youth at risk of poverty. And then we also saw this in the recommendations. We need to look at the social convergence framework and how that links into economic governance. When we talk about the convergence framework, we see that unfortunately within the context of the reform of budget policy in member states, we see that budgets are really being jeopardized, and we need to make sure that austerity does not jeopardize our public services and social well-being. Social partners, yes, of course, I can wrap up, but there is the fact that we need to base ourselves on what we have in the minimum wage directive. We need to be truly ambitious so that we have empowerment on the social side and also on the trade union side. I come from a country that has strong trade unions, but not every country has those types of trade unions that are able to monitor the evaluation of the action plan and the implementation thereof. And so we in our commission at the Parliament want to make sure that issues are fully taken up in the roadmap where they are not now. We need to look at health at the workplace, and I've just heard the position of Business Europe on the first report, and I find that really quite compelling. I think we'll have to discuss that. We need to look at the quality of jobs and social policy. I'm the rapporteur on an own initiative opinion on the just transition. We need to have a better protection of workers who have to deal with these transitions, the green and digital transitions. We need to protect them better, especially when there are restructurings. I think a lot has been said by my colleagues, but what we're really expecting of the future action plan is something that we feel needs to be truly ambitious.
Thank you very much, Estelle. I was suspicious that with you I would need a switch off button. Sophia, things you couldn't manage to put forward in writing in the opinion?
Oh, so many things.
I was sure about it. The floor is yours for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, starting with the lessons learned, you know that we've been quite active in the preparation of the opinion, so talking to stakeholders, also having these missions to Finland and Slovenia. And I think one big takeaway that we all share, I suppose, is that social rights have not necessarily come to stay. They're always under attack, political majorities shift, priorities shift, and we need to work on social rights permanently, constantly, and we also need to advance them all of the time. Because if we just say, oh, we managed to get this kind of legislation, this kind of new standard, and lean back, it will be gone quite quickly. So having one action plan and having achieved some of the targets or some of the priorities, that's nice, but we have to keep on pushing. And we also have to state quite clearly, as a workers group, I think that it does not necessarily depend on governments only, but also on the concept of social partners and of the employers. And in many countries, we have seen quite a shift of social partnership, and that employers have become unwilling to negotiate on the European level as well as on a local or on a national level. So we have to have some tools to actually get them to negotiate. It can't be an option and then they say, okay, no, we tried, but we didn't find a compromise and then get out of it. We need to have the commitment from both sides and the framework to actually get to a conclusion. And here I allow myself a comment towards Business Europe and the skills topic. Looking at Austria, for instance, we see in research quite clearly that on the one hand, employers are asking urgently for skilled workers and really lament a lot that there is a lack of skilled workers. But on the other hand, they delegate this responsibility to the public sphere. It's up to the government to come up with a plan. It's up to the taxpayer to pay for it. We see an actual decrease of investment by employers in reskilling and upskilling. So I think there is quite an obvious mismatch in the discourse we have and the action on the other hand. So coming to the concrete recommendations, well, we have discussed them in the opinion. And I think that a concrete message again is that we need to have legally binding standards and commitments here. We've already discussed occupational health and safety. So heat at the workplace, climate change, but also mental health and psychosocial risks. And something where I'm really proud of is that we really highlighted quality jobs in our opinion. And this was not easy. Of course, there's a matter of definition. What are quality jobs? But I think this is exactly the thing that we should push for, where we have the time to focus our commitment. What do we expect from quality jobs? How can we improve quality in jobs? So how can we fight in-work poverty, for instance, via secure forms of employment? How can we, be sure that artificial intelligence at the workplace is not harmful, but actually increases productivity at the same time, has a stabilizing effect on the labor market? How can we ensure fair mobility? And I think this was one of the most debated ones, how can we implement a right to training? And here again, coming back to the skills topic, having a right to training is something different than talking about a skills mismatch all of the time. We also touched upon public procurement and social conditionalities and upon housing, all of the topics that have been mentioned already here in the panel or today, so I won't go into the details yet. But one thing I want to highlight, and we don't have it in the opinion, but I think it's a cross-cutting issue, and that's worker participation. And that also leads to the last part about social dialogue and implementation of social partners. If we really want to implement European standards on a national level, we need social partners. But if you want to get to the workplace level, we need worker participation as well. We need trade union involvement on the workplace level. And I think this is one of the crucial messages also to the Parliament and to the Commission, that worker participation doesn't mean to have one file, for instance, the EWC directive, but that it's a cross-cutting issue, and that for every legal act, for every recommendation, you should consider how to involve social partners, trade unions and workers on all levels. So this would be pretty much my recommendations to the institutions. And I think regulation, even legally binding regulation, still can leave some room for implementation with the social partners as well. So also looking to our Scandinavian friends, and also in Austria we have quite a lot of power behind social partnership, but then we need the room for implementation, but still we need to have the commitment and the possibility to get to this kind of a conclusion without employers drawing back and saying that they're not willing to find a compromise there. So I think this kind of shift needs to take place as well. So I think I will leave it to my colleagues for the next questions.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Very structured, straightforward, and very good, of course. So, with this whole kind of setting scene, a lot of different contributions from different sides, now is the time for your contribution. So I can see Cinzia already. Hands up, guys. I can see Franca, Zoe, Plamen, Mari Carmen. For the moment, I've got Cinzia, I've got Franca, I've got Zoe, I've got Plamen and Mari Carmen. Anyone else? Doesn't seem to be the case. So still, please, let's stick to some 2 to 3 minutes max, because I would like to give the panelists the chance to also respond to the debates. So Cinzia, please start and try to stay brief.
Sì, come al solito, per gli italiani.
Yes, as usual, it's an important challenge for Italians. I would like to say the objectives of this plan and the instruments that we're going to be using in order to consolidate and make sure that we have an upward social convergence in the first place, that this is something we tend to forget. And also when we analyze both the Draghi and the latter reports, we sometimes forget that apart from competitiveness, there's also cohesion. As Estelle quite rightly pointed out, cohesion is a European objective. Now, ever more often we keep seeing the European Commission laying down standards, objectives, targets, but then when it comes to implementation, it is only left up to the member states, and then we go and check what the implementation is like. The report that was published in July, the Commission report on employment and social developments in Europe, paints an almost enthusiastic picture. But if you read it and look at it closely and try and see what level of employment, what number of new jobs have actually been created in our jobs. And also there is the working poor. There are more and more of them in our respective countries. Even those who have jobs usually subsist on really low wages. And my question to the Commission is this: what are the European actions that are going to be used in order to intervene? Because there is no intervention mechanism in case of social imbalances. We do have a mechanism when it comes to economic imbalances, but when it comes to social imbalances, the only thing we've got is words. or reallocation of resources, so to say. Now we've got the social convergence framework, which is not mandatory. These are still just indicators, recommendations to the member states. But there is no mandatory monitoring mechanism and nothing to indicate and tell people how these resources should be used, because we as trade unionists are being told, no, we can't have social conditionality. What do you mean we can't have it? We are using public money and there is no social conditionality. How does this work? This is a totally unacceptable kind of dichotomy. So what are the mechanisms that the European Commission, within the framework of the new plan, wishes to include in order to really be able to monitor and check that the European resources are used in the proper way and that they're actually being used in order to arrive at these objectives? Thank
you. Good morning. Je ne m'excuse pas, mais je vais parler français.
I'm not going to apologize, but I am going to speak French as well. Yes. Well, yes, just to pick up on what Claude was saying this morning, and others too, including the representatives of the European Parliament, on just how important it is to have a Europe of balance. There needs to be a balance, and that has long meant not just the financial and competitiveness leg, as it were, but there's the other leg, namely the social pillar, the social side of things. And I understand the Commission asking about the ambitions in order to ensure that there are progress indicators in countries which are taken into account but also monitored, as Cinzia has said, and penalties, sanctions as well for failure to make progress in these areas. Now, for months now, many of us have been quoting the Draghi report. I looked at the Draghi report, I looked through it, and it says a great many things, and in particular it underscores the importance of investments as compared to other continents such as China or the US. Now, what have we done so far? What we've done is to take on the easiest tasks, tackling social rules, social standards, as if those social rules, social standards could be responsible for the absence of innovation or the lack of competitiveness. So what we need to do is tackle these issues, and what do we need to do in order to tackle them to ensure that Europe does more to invest in the priority areas identified in the report? And lastly, I produced an opinion or report on AI with a number of recommendations from this committee. So how can we consider that a game changer or a form of innovation or a technology which is so disruptive, how could we take the view that that doesn't warrant legislative change, adaptation of legislation, whereas some of our directives and regulations are more than 20 years old? So my question for you is this. Why do we take this view and say that we have everything we need? Well, yes, I mean, there's an awful lot in Europe. We have the social Europe, and I wouldn't wish to deny that. But there are things which do need to be adapted, because we now have this form of technology which is highly disruptive in relation to the problems that are addressed in the directives. Thank you.
Councillor, please, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Lucy. I start by thanking the Workers Group for organizing, launching and commissioning this very timely report. I also like to thank the panelists because they really provided very valuable insights. Now, why is this report important? It reminds us that while there has been progress on the social pillar, with the new directives, minimum wage, new rules on work-life balance, working conditions and gender balance, the implementation, as I read it, is uneven. The social dimension, as I think we all agree, is receding. It is sliding backwards. Competitiveness, fiscal tightening, and even over the last year, war preparedness dominate the agenda. Social cohesion, fairness, inclusion are somehow going behind. So our task as workers and for the new action plan is clearly to try to reverse this trend, this going backwards. As I see it, there are some points we can concentrate, deliver on the minimum wage directive so that we reach the 80% collective bargaining coverage target. As we all know, it has already been said that some countries are strong, some countries are not really strong on this point. To guarantee a minimum income in the EU law, I mean, this really raises objections, but I think if we want to fight homelessness, housing, this is what we should do. I mean, you go out of the Radisson or the Renaissance Hotel where I stay, in front, literally, of the European Parliament, there are those 3 guys for 2 years that are homeless with their blankets, their dog, and everything. So this is not the picture of the Europe we want. Then we do have, for the action plan, protect platform workers, precarious workers, and monitor the surging new forms of work, including the impact of artificial intelligence. And then there's the question of investment. Invest in care, in lifelong learning, and also try to secure through investment green and digital transition. I mean, green and digital transition, it's not going to happen without investment, concrete investment in this area. Finally, the EU must really tie funds, fund procurement, to social progress, not only fiscal rules and competitiveness. I think on the whole, somebody mentioned it, it's very important to see that the European pillar is streamlined across all policies, economic, industrial, digital, and even security. And it is not really sidelined. Now, as workers, our task is real to fight for these objectives, but maintain and keep our trade unions strong so that the next phase of the European integration puts social rights back where they belong, at the center of all European cohesion and activity. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Plummen, please, 2 minutes.
Hello? Only this is working. Благодаря. Няколко бързи коментара, които мисля.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to make a few brief comments which we believe are important. As regards the trade unions in Southeast Europe, and more specifically when it comes to quality jobs, and the new emphasis that we're now placing on these issues, collective bargaining negotiations are important, and we cover around about 25% of the country. So that means that 75% of jobs in Bulgaria are presumably not quality jobs. Now, how can we implement this directive? How can we transpose it? And we've been trying to do this for the 3rd year running now, and when it comes to the minimum wage, how can we do this if we still have associations of employers implementing a number of different projects which are financed through the social fund, but they simply refuse to conclude collective bargaining agreements? Can we do anything to achieve transparency as to who plays what part in these relationships? We have criteria when it comes to representativeness, but those criteria don't include collective agreements. We have other criteria regarding the representativeness of the various stakeholders, but that is simply the state of affairs. That's the situation. And trade unions often say that we can only achieve anything through organizations, membership. And in our own country, coverage is about 15%, if memory serves. I think in Germany, those figures are 17 or 18%. But the directive doesn't provide any specific recommendations in terms of numbers in this respect. So I'd be inclined to say, well, yes, we have implemented a certain plan, and now we will be changing our focus, shifting our focus towards quality jobs. But I don't think that in the southeast of Europe that's really going to work. And I don't know how we will be able to achieve those targets, those objectives. We are moving towards the situation in the West. China was our focal point for a long time, but now we seem to be shifting the focus towards Western Europe. So those objectives will not really lead to social peace. So far, we've had safe, and now we're talking about sure, but that sure, given all, it can't really ensure that we'll achieve all these mantras of the just transition and the like. And AI, as Franca said, is a very important phenomenon. Hence, my question for the European Commission. How could the Commission support the Member States in working along those lines and in implementing the relevant components of the directive? Because if my memory serves, I believe that the Member States are threatened with sanctions, with penalties, if certain aspects haven't been implemented. Now we're talking about a new round, a new cycle already. So that's my question for the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Marie Carmen is the last speaker. Please stay brief.
Gracias, Lucy.
Thank you, Lucy. Well, yes, I would like to raise a few points as well, a few questions, because, I mean, we've been spending an awful lot of time talking about social conditionality and the social convergence framework, but in actual fact, what I think we could do would be to take stock of the situation and state very clearly that the Commission isn't really taking these issues seriously. It doesn't seem to mean business with them. It's not really seriously addressing social conditionality and implementing the social convergence framework, which would really help us. And furthermore, the message that the European Commission is conveying, those messages are really contradictory, because they're talking about reducing the social fund, cutting back on the social fund, but also cutting back on cohesion policy. But the really bad news is that that cannot result in social progress in the social sphere. So if I may say so, in my own country, I would say that we are really talking most about social Europe, because in looking at the Commission's narrative and what they're saying about security, defence and the like, but really they're not really doing anything about social Europe. They're putting a stop to it, as it were, this whole culture. So we believe that these issues are very closely linked to whatever the action plan may be to make progress in the social pillar. So to be honest, I think it's going to be extremely difficult for any headway to be made on the social pillar. And I think we already have the information. We can see what sort of progress has been made in the social pillar over previous years. And by introducing new directives, the directives that we're already familiar with, the minimum wage, platform work, and so on, but that hasn't really brought in any new rules really leading to significant progress in the social pillar. I entirely agree with Sophia in that what we need is rules so that we can really make headway in this area. And I think we're going to have to really stand firm, take a really firm stand on this in order to ensure that the future action plan and the future development of the social pillar, particularly given the policies and the factors that we have on the table, can succeed. But as I see it, it's going to be extremely difficult, and there's an awful lot of work ahead of all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This puts me into unsolvable situations, so without any further, 2 minutes, strictly 2 minutes per speaker. You've got 3 minutes. You got majority of the questions plus some when you were up. So let's start from that side. Guillaume, would you react in 2 minutes on the most pressing issues you have heard here throughout the discussion? I switch you off in 2 minutes. Sorry.
There were many pressing issues mentioned, so I'll focus only on two. Maybe indeed we need, I believe, for the new action plan to focus on cohesion and really have a territorial dimension, to pay more attention. I mean, something that has not been mentioned so much until now is the right to stay or freedom to stay that we find in the Enrico Letta report, which is supposed to be able to cover all issues linked to transport, linked to housing affordability, and these services are often the first window that citizens have with the ability of the state to respond to their problems, issues, and day-to-day concerns. So also quite an important element for democracy. So would really like for the action plan to also have this dimension. And AI will be an important conversation between the social partners, and definitely what needs to be done about this. SGI Europe has not yet arrested a position, and this is still in constant evolution. So one thing that we can say is that really social partners, especially at the sectoral level, are the best in place to determine what the compatibility between jobs and jobs integrating AI. So not replacing jobs, really make them compatible with the different technologies in the different sectors. That's not going to be done easily, but that needs to be done, and social partners really are quite best placed to do this. So I will stop here to not be too long.
Thank you very much. Mattias, your 2 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. It's a lot to digest and a lot to take in, so it's hard to say something in 2 minutes. But my feeling is that, yes, we are living in a dangerous world. Yes, we have a lot of challenges. And yes, there will be a lot of hard and tough choices ahead for all of us, as individuals, organizations, and as countries and as members. It's a very, very good thing that we have this EU together, because we can meet, we can discuss, and we can do it democratically. And we can progress. So it's very stable and good. I'm sorry, we need to have more competitiveness. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. But we need it. Otherwise, there will be no jobs, and especially no quality jobs. Investment, yes. Companies must invest more. We must do that. You are right. But we need to set conditions for that also. Everything isn't dark, but we have to adjust and squeeze some areas to make it more investment friendly in Europe. Yes, we need to look at AI. It's a huge thing, but it's also an opportunity. Europe has faced technical achievements and progress before. A lot of them has been created in Europe, by the way. So why shouldn't we make it a good thing this time around also? But we have a lot of things together. I will end with just pointing out that the social partners are given in the treaty. We have a strong position. If we can work together, negotiate, we can make a lot of things happen. We have a strong political platform.
Thank you very much. There, 2 minutes.
And the microphone is even working. Thank you so much. I think that, yeah, with the colleagues, of course, sitting here, we can all agree about the concrete initiatives that we would like to see. But on top of course, fighting for those, I think that, yeah, we really need to also change the whole narrative of this competitiveness. We need to take it back and really make sure that everybody who is talking about this competitiveness understand that there is no competitiveness, there is no productivity, and there's even no innovation without workers. So this is why Europe needs to deliver for workers. It needs to deliver for people and for the planet. Because our biggest competitiveness advantage is actually European social model. Europe, where it's good to live and where it's good to work. Because if we invest in education, maybe we will have workers with the right skills. If we invest in childcare, we will have mothers who will be able to integrate at the labor market. If we invest in public health systems, we will have healthy workers that might be in good working conditions, even motivated to contribute to productivity and competitiveness. If we invest in transport, we will have workers who can be mobile. If we invest in each and every region, we will have upward convergence and not race to the bottom. And this is the threat that we are facing right now. Talking about competitiveness, we do not want to be like China. We do not want to be as United States. We want to have a good and a healthy and safe working environment where it's also nice to live. So I think that, yeah, we really need to aim for upward convergence, not race to the bottom, and really to look at the shared deal that everybody needs to contribute. And here also a call to the European Commission. We cannot talk about this social progress if we again and again repeat also the talks about austerity. We need to start leaving the imposed austerity measures behind and really invest in quality jobs and in people and the planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Estelle, 1 minute for you.
Alors, très rapidement,
Well, very briefly, social conditionality is indeed vital. Currently, cohesion funds make up about 1/3 of the EU budget, and that's very clear in relation to the CAP. But mainly, the opposition to that comes from the member states in the Council. Quite often, they don't want anyone to interfere in the way they use their budgets, whereas as I see it, the 21 principles of the European Pillar of Social Rights could be the convergence criteria, plus the 80% absence of social coverage. So that's a very important factor as well for the trade unions. But unfortunately, I think it's the member states that we need to convince first. In particular, those with authoritarian regimes, and they don't like civil society, they don't like trade unions, they want to be in direct contact with the people, as it were. And yes, indeed, I'm very concerned about Business Europe's position in this respect. They've said that there is no need for legislation, whereas the first Parliament report on AI at the workplace really views all workers as if they were platform workers. So its approach seems to be that algorithm-based management should be limited. Now, Business Europe, I don't know whether you would want to be hired and made redundant, dismissed, have your wages calculated, all based on AI. I don't really think you would, nor would most workers come to that. They don't want AI to govern their emotions and their interrelations and everything. It's just not really on.
Sophia?
Yes, just quickly towards Plamen, one of the ideas, for instance, in the opinion also is to use the tool of public procurement to increase collective bargaining. I think we can't leave the implementation just like that, but we also need further concrete tools, and with access to public finances connected to collective bargaining, I think this is a very strong advantage for companies as well to start the dialogue and to get access to the public money. I don't really want to spend much more time and leave it to the Commission because at the very beginning you were saying you hope that we're not disappointed that you're not speaking about concrete measures today. I think let's turn the table and let's say this is still part of the consultation. I think you've heard a lot of input today from the discussion already in this morning about our doubts, about our ideas and strong commitment to certain things. So you have the EESC opinion, and thanks a lot to all of you for working with me on this one. It was really a great experience. It's a great opinion as a baseline. We've got this study and we've got this excellent debate today, and I hope you can take a lot of messages and concrete proposals with you as well for the next steps.
That's a challenge, Denis. Go ahead with that, really 4 minutes, no more.
Thank you. Thanks. No, many thanks to all of you for the discussions, the questions asked, the comments made. Et peut-être que je vais passer au français.
And now I'm going to switch to French.
Ce matin du socle.
Well, this morning we were talking about the EPSR and the first action plan and the second action plan, which is now underway. And I think in the main there are three issues we've been talking about. The first of these is the context, the challenges, and I think we all agree on that score. I won't really spin out the discussion on that point, but I think broadly speaking we would agree in that this instrument, the European Pillar of Social Rights and its action plan, are very helpful, they're very useful for our compass, as it were. The Vice President was talking about a shield, and I think that's a good way of putting it. I like that. And so I think we need this European social contract. And looking at the current context, I mean, we all have our own reading of the Draghi and Letta reports, but I think what we can say is that, as we have understood it, one of the key messages is that the social side of things and competitiveness really go hand in hand, and you can't set one off against the other. There can be no opposition between them. Now, I would like to reassure you. I mean, I know the messages are clear, but I would just like to try to reassure you regarding the method and the degree of ambition as well. So starting with the method, I've certainly heard your criticism regarding the evaluation of the 2021 first action plan. Now, I won't go into detail on this, but we have 75 initiatives. Some of these involve legislation, some of them are binding, they're directives, and they're currently being transposed, and our experts have pointed out that it is complicated, it's not easy. I could say more about this, but the Commission really is helping with all this and making resources available to underpin that work and help to ensure that transposition can be carried out properly. Now, as to the evaluation, the assessment, there are some communication-based initiatives in instruments which are less binding, strategies and communications. And so that's all part and parcel of evaluation. And then there's the funding side of things, the funds. Obviously, we monitor funds very closely indeed. The Commission services do monitor them closely. And sometimes we may perhaps hear a bit too much about just how complicated the whole system is in terms of the funds, but we do keep very close tabs on it. And then when it comes to the targets, employment, training and combating poverty, we monitor those objectives very closely as well. And this semester is a useful exercise in that regard. So we weren't really able to carry out a full-fledged evaluation in view of the complexity of the issue and the many initiatives, some of which haven't as yet been transposed. But that doesn't mean that we're having to start from scratch and just draw a veil over everything that's been done so far and start all over again. Turning now to the level of ambition, I'd just like to say a little bit about deregulation. Obviously, we hear your criticism and your concerns that this file could mean that there will be a sort of overall lowering of the level of the social acquis, a sort of race to the bottom. But there's a key declaration that I draw to your attention. That is a formula that we've proposed, and it's fully in line with current legislation when it comes to posting of workers and that directive, and the implementation of the posted workers directive. But as part of that work, as we evaluated the transposition of the directive, which dates back to 2014, we found that member states have put in place different types of systems, different ways of doing things, which may indeed make the companies supplying the posted workers' lives more difficult when it comes to the cross-border aspects. Yes, I will draw to a close, but this is something which is really ongoing. It's not so much a question of regulation or deregulation, but simplification. And obviously that we are really working hard to ensure continuity following on from the first action plan, quite clearly. Of course, there's another strand, worker mobility, job mobility, and housing as well. That's an issue addressed as well. We've been looking at it, we've been talking about it from the perspective of homelessness, but it has many other aspects too, and AI as well. So what I'm saying is, and I believe the Vice President was very clear in this regard, there are some things that we can do through legislation and other things which can be achieved through policy and social dialogue, and that too is extremely important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As it's 1 o'clock, I do not have a single minute for myself, but still, what I would like you, Denis, to come out from here knowing that this has been informal, but a part of the public consultation. And be sure, here you've got the best qualified people, and be sure that majority of the people and their organizations still going to enter into the public consultation and give it in writing, but please take it seriously. What is clear is call for really legal, strong, enforceable, and sanctionable instruments that are needed. Although we are having some successes, and we did have a very successful period with the previous Commission, the final outcomes are sometimes really questionable, and we do not have proper evaluation of these and the way what and how to improve for the future period. I leave actually for the moment any other comments. The simplification deregulation issue is going to be an extremely hot one, and we would need to work on this because what we, as Sophia said, what we hardly achieved cannot be just voted down by in the sake of simplification of things. And very often we know that then the implementation could be extremely flexible, especially in some of the conditions. Let me thank, and you know that this is not the end of the story. We are going to be dealing with the issue in a way or another for the whole mandate, next mandate. But let me warmly thank all the panelists for incredibly valuable and important inputs. Thank you so much. Everybody is going to receive, of course, all the presentations. We actually did have just one, the study, and so on and so on. And let me thank warmly the Secretariat. It was extremely difficult to prepare this day. And thank you very much, the interpreters in the booth. Incredibly well job done. And see you 2:30 for the next part of our agenda of today.
Thank you as well, Estelle.
Sorry, I had to disappear 2 minutes. I had a phone call. So.
I can imagine. Thank you very much for coming.
Man, thanks for the invitation. We'll come back, huh? Don't worry.
Definitely. We stay in touch. Don't worry.
Yeah, we will come back. Merci. J'espère que vous avez rassuré.